there are quite a few hardcore Gennady Golovkin fans who are upset with the last video I made about Golovkin arriving in the UK. For whatever bizarre reason, they're upset. I'm going to address some of the comments left by these people in the comment section of that last video. First of all, let me clarify my motive for making that video and the point I was trying to get across in the video. Now, for those of you who watched that video in a calm and rational state of mind, you won't need me to explain what I'm about to explain. But for those of you who didn't watch it in a calm, rational state of mind, you're going to need to listen to the following clarification of my motive for making the video and the point I was trying to get across. Gennady Golovkin is an avoided fighter. Can we all agree on that? Yes, he is. Yeah, we can all agree. People like Billy Joe Saunders, Danny Jacobs, Canelo Alvarez, etc., are in no rush to fight him. Can we agree on that? Yes. All right, so we're all in agreement so far. I want those guys to fight Golovkin. Don't you? Yes, once again, we're all in agreement again. Stay with me now. Here's where me and you differ, it seems. I think that in order for Golovkin to get those fights, he needs to increase his public appeal. He needs to raise his public profile. Because the bigger your public profile is, the more of an audience you're going to get watching your fights, and therefore the more money you can generate. And the more money you can generate, the easier it will be to attract opponents. When Mike Tyson was in his prime, his aura of invincibility and the intimidation factor that he had was like Gennady Golovkin times 10. But yet Mike Tyson, for the most part, had no shortage of people who wanted to fight him. Why? Because Mike Tyson was the #1 cash cow in the heavyweight division at that time, in the mid to late 80s. This is why he didn't have no trouble getting opponents. Because even though these guys were scared of him, they knew if they wanted to get serious money, life-changing sums of money, they had to fight him. There was nowhere else they could go to get the life-changing sums of money in the heavyweight division back in the mid to late 80s. There was only really a short time when Michael Spinks, after beating Larry Holmes, was somewhat of a big name in the heavyweight division, somewhat of a cash cow. And he, unlike the other heavyweights, did avoid Tyson for a little bit, but he eventually fought him in the end. Other than Spinks, everybody knew if you want to pay there, you have to go to Tyson. And they were scared getting in the ring, a lot of these guys. But the law of big money made them go through with it. I mean, you look at Tyrell Biggs. He only had 14 or 15 fights. He was an Olympic gold medalist. Only had 14 or 15 fights. Looked terrible in a couple of his previous fights, particularly against David Bay. He wasn't ready to step in the ring with Tyson, who had like 35 fights or whatever it was. But he did it anyway. His team got him in there with Tyson anyway because it was a big payday. If Golovkin was the type of cash cow that Tyson was in the 80s, he wouldn't have any problem getting Billy Joe Saunders and Danny Jacobs and all these other guys in the ring. No problem. But because he's not that kind of cash cow, he don't need to be as big as Tyson. He just needs to be the biggest cash cow in the middleweight division. Yeah? But because he's not the biggest cash cow in the middleweight division, these other guys have got options. They can go elsewhere to get big paydays. They don't need to go to Triple G. Billy Joe Saunders is in talks with Canelo's people. He can go to Canelo to get a big payday. He and most people see Canelo as a more winnable fight for Billy Joe than Golovkin. Yeah? So when people have got other options which pay just as much, if not more, and the fights are more winnable, 9 times out of 10, they're going to go with those other options. That's just how it is. So in order for Golovkin to get these guys in the ring, he's going to need to build himself a bigger fan base. So when I see him going through Heathrow Airport, one of the busiest international airports on the planet, and nobody recognizes the guy in this video of him walking through the airport. He's not mobbed by the public. He's not mobbed by paparazzi. Nothing. When I see that, that to me was indicative of how much work there still is to be done by Golovkin's promotional team to get him to where he needs to be in order to secure these big fights. It's not about, oh, look at Golovkin not getting any attention. What a loser. It's not about that. This is not that kind of channel. I don't give a damn about who gets attention or this, that, and the other. I'm not an egotist and I'm not impressed by people's egos. It's not about none of that. It's about Golovkin building himself into a big enough brand internationally that he'll be able to attract these big fights at middleweight. Golovkin has had, I believe, 16 world title fights. Yeah? Most of them have been in the United States where he's based. Only one of those 16 world title fights has been a pay-per-view up to now. Only one. And that was against David Lemieux. And the only reason it was a pay-per-view was because of David Lemieux. Because David Lemieux is a pay-per-view star in Canada. If it wasn't for Lemieux, that fight wouldn't have been a pay-per-view, people. It would have been like Golovkin's other 15 world title fights. No pay-per-view. You look at Canelo. How many pay-per-views has Canelo had? Loads. Even against overmatched opposition, they're putting this guy on pay-per-view. How many pay-per-views had Floyd Mayweather had and Manny Pacquiao? How many pay-per-views has Miguel Cotto had? These guys have had all types of pay-per-views. So for a guy like Golovkin, who's as dominant as he is, the goal for him and for his promotional team is to build him up to the point where he's like a Canelo or a Mayweather, etc., in terms of being able to get pay-per-views, because if you're a pay-per-view star, you're going to attract people who want to fight you, regardless of how dangerous you are, just like Mike Tyson back in the days. Yeah? And fighting Kell Brook is a step in the right direction. And I said this in the previous video for Gennady Golovkin. Because if he dispatches of Kell Brook in devastating fashion, as I expect him to, he's going to inherit a lot of those Kell Brook fans. British fans are known to be very magnanimous in defeat. If you go to the UK as a fighter and defeat a British fighter on his home soil, you will often be clapped, maybe not cheered, but certainly clapped out of the ring. And they'll have a lot of respect for you, the British fans. You'll win a lot of fans if you go to the UK and defeat a well-known British fighter. So this whole Kell Brook fight, one of the reasons why Golovkin's people are taking it, apart from the fact they're getting paid well, is also because it will help raise Golovkin's international profile. So next time he goes to the UK, people will recognize him in the airport. And it's not about, being recognized for vanity's sake. I don't give a damn about no vanity's sake. It's about, if he gets recognized next time, that shows that his profile is growing. And that shows that, maybe the next time the pay-per-view will be even bigger. Yeah, that's what it's about. And just to finish off with this whole airport business, some people saying, how the hell would Golovkin get mobbed at the airport when he didn't announce that he was going to be at the airport on social media? I have to shake my head at that comment, people. How old are some of you guys? You do realize there was a time on this planet before Twitter and Facebook, don't you? I mean, were you guys born after the new millennium? I mean, when were you guys born? You do realize that back in the 90s, fighters and all types of different celebrities were getting mobbed at airports, shopping malls, and all over the place when there was no Twitter, no Facebook, no social media at all. You do realize this, don't you, people? You do realize that back in the days, Mike Tyson went to Brixton, yeah, in South London, UK, on an impromptu visit, and he got mobbed in the street by thousands of people. He didn't have to announce that he was there. People just saw, because he was such a big name and so well recognized worldwide. They saw his face. Oh my God, it's Mike Tyson. Before you know it, he's being mobbed. You don't need to, if you're that bigger attraction, you don't need to announce where you're going. People will just recognize you and mob you. That didn't happen to Golovkin. Nobody recognized him. And it don't matter if you got your hood up. If you're that well known, people will recognize you. Another indication of how big somebody is, how well known they are, and how much of a star they are, is if the paparazzi are following them around and the paparazzi are mobbing them. I used to work in high-end retail. They call it luxury retail, as a security guard and also as a security manager. I used to work in places like Bond Street and Sloane Street in Knightsbridge. Right? Bond Street is in the West End, Sloane Street in Knightsbridge. And I worked in many of the luxury boutiques. And we used to get celebrities come in those boutiques all the time, on a weekly basis. You know, famous football players, Jose Mourinho came in there, Kanye West came in there, Tina Turner, David Beckham and Posh Spice, all types of different celebrities came in those places. J.K. Rowling, the woman who wrote the Harry Potter books, foreign celebrities and British celebrities would come in there on a regular basis in those stores. Now, oftentimes we would get a call from a representative of one of those celebrities, and they would tell us in advance that this, an hour or so in advance that the celebrity is coming. Sometimes they tell us the day before. Sometimes they just tell us on the day, that this celebrity is coming. And they told us that because they wanted us basically to shut the store down. We also had Justin Timberlake coming to one of the stores. So they wanted us to shut the store down so that the celebrity could shop in peace and not get mobbed while they're shopping. And then we would have them usually leave out the back entrance, not leave out the front of the store, because that's usually where the public would be, or the paparazzi would be waiting for them. Yeah. Now, very often the public, in most cases, the public had no idea that these celebrities were going to turn up to these stores and do shopping and all that type of stuff. They had no idea. But the paparazzi, God knows how they know. Sometimes they get tip-offs. Sometimes celebrities want paparazzi at certain places. But I can tell you for a fact, because I worked with these celebrities in these stores and whatnot many times. In most cases, J.K. Rowling being an example, these people don't want to be mobbed by the paparazzi. They're trying everything in their power to stay away from the paparazzi. They just want to be able to go shopping and go about their business normally. When we had J.K. Rowling come in a store one time, when she walked in the front entrance, there was no paparazzi. She just got out of her car and came in, whatever. She was walking around, very, tall, from what I remember, a tall woman. And she was walking around and whatnot. But before you know it, a couple of paparazzi started milling outside of the front door. All right, we got to know the paparazzi. We got to know them because they're always buzzing around. And they were trying to look inside of the shop. We wouldn't let them in. They were trying to look inside of the shop, these couple of paparazzi, to see if she was in there, because they'd obviously heard. And in fact, I didn't even know what J.K. Rowling looked like at the time. One of the other security told me, because I was wondering, why the paparazzi milling around outside? And they told me, because J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter woman, she's in the shop. And I'm like, okay, that's her. All right, cool. So they were milling around outside. Now, what happens when you get these paparazzi milling around is that the general public then start looking and saying, hang on, why are these paparazzi hanging around? There must be a celebrity here. And before you know it, you had a big crowd of paparazzi and the general public. Yeah, this is common. So at the airport, when celebrities come through, even if the public don't recognize them at first, if they've got shades on or they got a hood up, the paparazzi are going to be there. The paparazzi are going to be there, and they are going to attract the public. Like when Ronda Rousey lost to Holly Holm and she flew in through some airport and she was covering her face and trying not to be seen. She still got mobbed. Yeah, the paparazzi are very resourceful and they will find you wherever the hell you are. It's not rocket science, people. They knew that Golovkin was going to have to arrive in the UK at least before Tuesday because he's got a public workout on Tuesday. And they knew that he was in the United States on, Friday, Saturday. So there was only a couple of days window there for him to arrive in the UK. It's really not rocket science. Shannon Briggs on his own was able to gate crash certain public events for David Hay and Vladimir Klitschko. And he says it was just by networking and having his little spies tip him off on the phone and turning up certain places. Now, I think some of those events were staged by him and the other protagonists. Some of those events maybe were, like he says, he would get people to tip him off and he'd turn up. It's not that hard. And these paparazzi people have got all types of resources. Yeah. So again, the fact that Golovkin wasn't mobbed, had no paparazzi, no clicking of photographs, nothing, when he's walking through one of the busiest international airports in the world, it shows you that his public profile is not yet where it needs to be in order to attract these other big name fighters. Yeah. And again, the Brook fight will help. Yeah. And some person said, you're going to have to eat your words, Hatman, when the public workout takes place and there's loads of people there. Of course, there's going to be loads of people at a public workout. There was loads of people at the Anthony Joshua, Dominic Brazil public workout. Does that mean that Dominic Brazil is a big international star? No, they'd come to see Anthony Joshua. What are you talking about? Some person had also said, well, the Sky News team were at the airport when Golovkin arrived. Of course the Sky News team were there. They're promoting the fight. They're airing the fight. They're supposed to be there. How many news media were there who were not Sky? He wasn't mobbed by no paparazzi. And the public workout has been promoted all over Sky Sports. It's been promoted by Eddie Hearn, who's got God knows how many hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers. It's been promoted by Kell Brook, who's got God knows how many hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers. So obviously there's going to be lots of people at a public workout and there's going to be lots of people at the weigh-in. Look how big it's been promoted by people who have got massive amounts of followers. Sometimes you guys make me laugh. Yeah. Bottom line is, Golovkin has only had one pay-per-view in 16 world title fights. This will be his second in his 17th. And he's having to fly abroad for it because he can't get it in the country where he's based as a fighter. So he's got a long way to go. And hopefully the Brook fight will boost his profile a bit more. It will make him a bigger star in boxing. Hopefully he can generate more money and he'll be able to attract these big fights and we'll get it on. That's ultimately my motivation behind making that first video, and that's what I want to see. Golovkin involved in the big fights with those fighters who at the moment are avoiding him. He needs to give them an offer monetarily that they can't refuse. Yeah, that's what it's about. So moving on from that, I think I've addressed everything to do with that whole silly fiasco and these overly emotional fanboys. The Sky News and the public workout and, him not getting mobbed and all that kind of stuff. You could have Mike Tyson walk through Heathrow Airport today and people would recognize Tyson. There's no way that he could walk through Heathrow Airport without being recognized by loads of members of the public. Impossible. Even Shannon Briggs now, he went around all types of different places in the UK and he was mobbed in the street. He didn't announce that he was going to be at certain places. I mean, maybe some places he did, other places he didn't. Other places he just turned up and people were like, hang on, we know you. We recognize you. We saw you're the guy that's trolling Vladimir Klitschko and David Hay. We recognize you. You're the Let's Go Champ guy. Yeah, right now Shannon Briggs has got a bigger international profile than Gennady Golovkin. And it's not because of anything he's done in the ring lately, obviously. It's just because he's been trolling people. But whatever the case may be, he's got a bigger international profile, whether you think he deserves it or not. So, you know, that is what that is. Now, lastly, before I end the video, I want to address a different comment that was left by somebody else. And this kind of ties into a previous video I made about Golovkin, where I was talking about the fact that Golovkin and his team are looking past Kell Brook. They're talking about who they're going to fight after they beat Kell Brook. And that is a warning sign. That is one of the telltale signs of an upset. Now, I don't think there's going to be an upset in this fight. I think even Golovkin on an off night will be able to deal with Kell Brook without too much trouble. But nonetheless, I have to point this out because this was a comment that somebody left. They said, is it wise and is it normal for a champion in Golovkin's position to be arriving in an overseas country where he's going to fight only a couple of days before the fight? Shouldn't he have arrived a couple of weeks before the fight? That's a good point the person made, because that's another telltale sign of when one of these big upsets happens. It reminds me of when Lennox Lewis fought Hasim Ratman for the first time. Lewis was in the United States training, but he was also filming a movie with Vladimir Klitschko. I think it was like Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12 or one of those Ocean's movies he was filming. And he didn't go to South Africa for the Hasim Ratman fight until a couple of days before the fight. And bearing in mind, there is a massive time difference between the United States and South Africa. And also, I think Lewis may have been training at Big Bear for the Ratman fight. So it's at altitude anyway, but still, the place they were fighting in South Africa was also high altitude. So Lewis didn't give himself much time to acclimatize or to adjust his body clock. Now, we know what happened in the Lewis fight there. Yeah. And I think even he would admit now that it was a big mistake not going to South Africa a lot earlier than he did. Now, in the case of Golovkin, again, where he trains in Big Bear in California and the United Kingdom, there is a massive time difference between the two places. It's something like 8 or 9 hours. Big time difference. Some people are able to adjust their body clocks more quickly than others. Now, Golovkin has always been a consummate professional. I've never seen him out of shape. So I'm going to make an assumption here, and it is an assumption, but I think a fair one. I'm going to assume that Golovkin and his team have been training and sleeping on UK time for the past few weeks, even though they've been in Big Bear. That would be the professional thing to do. But even so, if he saw Kell Brook as that much of a threat, a serious threat, you would have imagined that he would have tried to arrive in the UK earlier than now. So I do think it was a good point that person made in that comment. But like I just said, with all that being said, I still think Golovkin wins this fight without too much trouble. Yeah? The only way that I see Brook winning or even going quite a few rounds is if he's able to hurt Golovkin early and make Golovkin more cautious than he would normally be. If he's able to make Golovkin more cautious, then he has a chance of going some rounds or maybe even going the distance and, you know, never possibly even winning the fight. So we'll have to see. Anyway, people, I think I've made all the points I wanted to make in this video. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. It's your boy Hatman, I'm out.